Just don't look at explode.
Insanity ravages me, turning me away from my glorious destiny, forcing me inexorably down a path already trod. History repeats. Destiny sets.
These are the words of Galvatron, a bot stuck in a paradoxical loop of violence and failure. And driven insane by it. A bot obsessed with not being considered a slave and yet hell-bent on forcing others into slavery. I'd love it if you hit like on the vid, subscribe if you're new, and let's take a look at the paradox that is Galvatron. Real quick before we do, let me just take 5 seconds of your valuable eyeball time to say thank you for helping me achieve this. And to celebrate, I'm going to be giving away this. I'll be playing around with that later in the vid. Apparently you can use voice commands. Bumblebee, doggy style. Looks like he doesn't want it.
I was just testing him anyway.
Okay, gotta focus. It all starts back in '86 and the corporate slaughter that led to the death of many, many bots.
Don't cry, small child. Now you can give us even more money. You got any money on you now?
This gave us a purple phoenix rising from the ash of Megatron's corpse, a powerful herald resurrected to run the small-time, small-fry errands that a dark god just ain't got time for, like fetching mythical and legendary artifacts that have literally just been invented for this movie. His first ever act was one of retribution, gate-crashing Starscream's coronation and killing the pretender to the throne in retaliation for him kicking Megatron into space even though he was still alive. This public execution showed the other cons that he meant business, and they quickly fell into line. At this point, he showed himself to be an astute and pretty capable commander. He hatched a plan against Unicron when the Dark God made him feel every inch the slave when he consumed one of Cybertron's moons, disregarding the fact that Galvatron considered it his property. To destroy Unicron, he needed the Matrix, which was being held by Ultra Magnus. Gimme! And Galvatron and his troops made pretty short work of the seasoned Autobot veteran. Now this is pretty much murder, let's face it. He's got Magnus cornered and out of options, and could have just taken him prisoner and ripped the Matrix away from him. But once Magnus says that he'll never relinquish it, Galvatron's like, okay, fine, I hope you like looking at your own insides. He couldn't open the Matrix though, so Unicron swallowed him whole. Nom. And once Hot Rod got in there too, Galvatron tried to form an alliance with him. The enemy of my enemy is my... He swallowed me like a fucking Viagra, okay? So Unicron psychologically tortured him, forcing him to attack Hot Rod. This is where he tried to pop his head off like a champagne cork. But then it turned out that Hot Rod could open the Matrix. He tossed Galvatron out into space to a particularly vague and open-ended finale. But
Galvatron lives.
They found him in a plasma pool on a planetoid called Thrall, a hellish space rock orbiting a red giant star and brimming with lava-like pools of plasma. So here's where the real madness starts, because soaking in this pool made him powerful like never before, but also fried his logic circuits, driving him insane and causing him to irrationally beat the living tar out of Cyclonus and Scourge. And here, as he showed again, when he randomly turned around and blew up the planetoid, just for his own shits and gigs. He destroyed the Autobots' brand new defense station, Outpost 1, and ordered the cons to take Blur and Wheelie's heads, even though they were just trying to escape. In that firefight, one of the sweeps, his own troops, got hit in the face and asked for help, but Galvatron was like, nope, take it like a man, son, before turning around and firing a huge blast into a nearby storm cell and causing a huge explosion. Now, whilst all this was happening, the bulk of the con forces based on Char were trying to organize a fight back under the leadership of the Quintessons, and Galvatron and his men arrived in the middle of a battle on a planet called Goo. Yes, Goo. Ordering his men to take out not just the Autobots, but the other cons as well.
What the fuck?
The Quintessons enticed him with talk of a Decepticon Matrix, and he was like, bonk, why didn't you mention this sooner? Which they offered to him in exchange for him wiping out the Autobots. They were saved by the Junkions before he could, though, so he launched a campaign of eradication against the Allies. Now, this included dismantling many Earth cities for their resources, which he used to build the gargantuan titan Triptychon. Eventually, though, he found out that the Quintessons were all bluster and there was no Decepticon Matrix. Plus, he was betrayed by Blitzwing, who I guess turned to the Quintesson side, before Galvatron tried to activate this device that would shut down every Cybertronian in the galaxy.
It will kill.
He flipped the switch, but Spike destroyed it and brought them all back to life. The Quintessons escaped, Blitzwing was cast out, and Galvatron ordered that his troops fall back to regroup. He weaponized the scary-sounding death crystals, intending to fire them at Cybertron with a big cannon.
Yes, I know.
Of course, mining the death crystals involved taking the local populace as slaves. But he was thwarted when Cup freed this monster called Chaos, and Galvatron ended up falling into a river of lava. He showed that he respected the dead as much as Andrew Tate respects women when he attacked a funeral barge, resulting in the resting place of so many bots being flown into a star. And he attacked a planet called Paradon, subjugating its populace into slave labor. Sandstorm managed to escape and call in the Autobots, and they chose to blow up the whole planet rather than let it fall under his tyrannical control. He took over the kingdom of Carbomia. Carbomia? Imprisoned their leadership and then took their superfuel and then ordered Octane be tortured for information. Octane was working with Starscream's ghost though and backstabbed him, leaving him alone to face Rodimus, Magnus and a whole bunch of Autobots. But somehow managed to escape. Don't know how, because they didn't show any of it. He tried and failed to sabotage the first annual peace conference on Cybertron, a plan involving kidnapping Daniel and therefore manipulating the Autobots to kill all of the peace delegates. That ended up with the planet blowing up too. And his love of beating his own troops got so severe that his own men sent him into therapy in that notorious episode on Planet Torculon.
Follow me. I know what to do.
Which ultimately ended up with the Doctors connecting him to the living core of the planet to try and help him, and eventually deciding that he needed a lobotomy. He eventually broke free and murdered the sentient organic core of the planet before razing the entire planet's civilization, leaving them so broken that it would take centuries to rebuild. But it's said that after his connection with the planet, he did appear to have regained a little bit of his sanity. He tried to kill Metroplex by ordering the Constructicons to crash an asteroid into him, perhaps forgetting that he could move. Said asteroid ended up on a collision course with an inhabited planet though. This planet was Eurythmia, a planet whose inhabitants could use sound waves in various different ways, including weaponizing them. The cons managed to get this technology for themselves though, but before they could use it, the Eurythmics, or whatever they were called, nullified it with anti-sound. Yeah, that's a thing. Don't think about it too much or you go crazy. Another baffling moment of mania was when Astro Train told him the news that key Autobot allies, the Junkions, had turned against them. Instead of capitalizing on it, he was like,
Fool.
Oh my god, he was going to stomp on him too.
he slapped Predaking right here. Turned out the Quintessons were behind the whole thing anyway and were beaming a signal that was messing with the Junkions' minds, and eventually Galvatron himself succumbed to their effects and attacked the Autobots.
And Cyclonus.
'Cause I believe in me.
He bonked Scourge again. And Scourge was just saying that without food, they'd run out of power.
I'll give you power.
And then nearly blasted him. This was right before they accidentally unleashed these bizarre creatures called transorganics. Did they come up with this guy during the art department's trip to Amsterdam? Look at him. Okay, I reckon lizard legs. Don't make me laugh, don't make me laugh. Bear trap back. Someone just check under that bed for helicopters. Oh, there's never been a bed in the office. We need to find the guy who ate the ashtray because I think it might be me. A proper balls ass trip is what I'm trying to say. And then a huge energy draining creature called the Dweller who would leech their energy and then put them neatly in his backpack. And of course, Galvatron ordered his own troops in first so they could be chewed up, giving him time to escape. Whee!
Why have I been saddled with such a useless pile of rusting junk for followers?
But bizarrely enough, the troops did love him. Like after this whole thing and him literally throwing them under the bus, Cyclonus was like, oh, I'm glad you got away, Galvatron.
Quit simping, you simp!
He blasted Swindle. That was probably because he was trying to run some dodgy bargain, and he made the already self-doubting Rodimus Prime even more insecure by bluffing that he had some kind of ultimate weapon that was clearly like a fucking 80s Walkman. But Rodimus nearly handed over the reins of leadership to somebody else. And it's so funny because once the ruses rumbled, he's like, stay back, Rodimus, or I'll play your voice back to you in slow motion. Before breaking up his doomsday device and stomping off in a huff, probably to beat the life out of some unsuspecting sweep. Then he kicked the corpse of one of his fallen troops. He punched Cyclonus in the face again here just because he was frustrated that he couldn't get this door open. And once the door did open because the Quintessons arrived, he promptly threw Cyclonus down it to pursue the Autobots. He didn't go himself. Don't know. And in one particularly crazy ep, Wild Rider and Dead End managed to get the Matrix off of Rodimus, and he figured the best way to use it was to cram it up his cannon in the hopes it would amp up the power levels of his shots. But what did it do? It summoned a bunch of ghosts. The ghosts of past Autobot leaders nonetheless. So Galvatron freaks out. He's like, oh no, not the gun barrel ghosts again. He tosses it to Scourge. Get rid of that, boy. So Scourge is like, sure, yeah, I'll definitely do what Matrix? Now, somehow, probably in part because he didn't load it into his cannon, Scourge was able to use the powers of the Matrix to power himself up by, in his words, 100,000 times, a factor of 100,000, whatever. Also distort himself to look like something from the end of the Substance. With said power, he overthrew Galvatron and Cyclonus to make himself leader of the cons. Oh my god, and this guy, Scourge, didn't transform. He morphed into, melted into his alt mode. Oh, god damn. Even though Cyclonus was the only one to stand up for Galvatron, and he got gunned down for it. I mean, Galvatron does this.
Only Galvatron leads.
Optimus managed to get the Matrix back off of Scourge though, and Galvatron was just like, forget it, bro. No, of course not. He threw him through a wall and blasted him. He had to team with the resurrected Opie to combat the hate plague, but then he got it and tried to bury a stick in Opie's head. This is not long after Opie had just saved his life.
I've got you.
Opie solved the whole hate plague thing by doing the thing that he often does. And the energies of the Matrix not only cured the disease, but also chilled Galvatron out quite a bit. Enough for him to declare a truce. And of course, it wasn't long before he just changed his mind and led an assault on Autobot City, making a play for the key to Cybertron's energy chamber. Again, he had no sympathy for Scourge after he was felled in battle.
You miserable pile of junk!
But Cyclonus managed to talk him out of caving his head in. The whole thing was the first step in his plan to move Cybertron into Earth's orbit and unleashing the plasma energy from its core, which would ultimately result in an explosion that would destroy both Cybertron and Earth. Yeah! Presumably allowing Galvatron to rule the rubble that was left over.
This entire solar system will be destroyed.
Yeah, there's no logic to this plan whatsoever. But once he was defeated here, Cybertron entered a new golden age. The end! No, he vowed to attack other planets. And I quote, "We will suck them dry. We will build a planet 100 times more powerful than Cybertron, and I will rule the galaxy."
And I will rule the galaxy.
Yeah, like I said. Okay, I'm good. I'm fine. Now, as I said at the start, I got Robosen to agree to let me give one of these guys away for my 100k giveaway in exchange for having a little play around with it and pushing some potential traffic to the link in the description below. I had an absolute blast with it, and even though it's not the flagship one that transforms, it's just pure quality. And let me tell you, it's going to be pretty hard sending him away because I got pretty attached to him. But I know getting this thing is going to make someone's day, so be it. Now, I'm not a toy channel, so I'm not going to just list all of his functions, but I will say this thing has got real character.
Bumblebee, stop! Stop! You're gonna walk right off the edge. So his hand's open. Oh no, so he's got these little things in there.
So basically, you can only put his gun in there. That's probably for the best. Now, as I said, there's loads of videos out there on this guy already, but my main takeaway would be that it seems to be made by people who actually care. All the design cues are there, and I think they even used the original voice actor.
I do that?
So make sure you're checking out the Robosen website. There are more details on their products, plus blogs, and when you order direct through them, there's an exclusive point system. Some products have discounts, and some products even come with additional gifts. Is that what's inside him? But it sounds really weird to say, but I had, a real experience with this guy, even though I only had him for a day. Anyway, he's all boxed up, good as new, ready to go out now. More details on how to win this guy at the end of the vid. Thank you so much to Robosen for making this happen. And most importantly, thanks to each and every one of you guys for all of the support that you give this channel. Back to Galvatron, rewinding back to this moment right here. This moment is the start of a Splinter offshoot universe. A universe where Galvatron didn't end up in the pool on Thrall, but fell to Earth with such force that the impact demolished Tokyo. His cells spread through the atmosphere, and once they came into contact with our flora and fauna, they created a monstrous legion of penis-mouthed Megatrons. And yes, of course, this is the Kiss Players universe. You know the drill. Let's leave it there. He may or may not have tried to get the Matrix off of Optimus right here, when he joined up with the Prime to try and seal Unicron within a portion of space known as the Triple Z point. He started hinting that Opie should use the Matrix. I reckon he was going to try and steal it, but Opie was suspicious and he was like, no, it's still replenishing from after having cured that hate plague thing, remember? He made a deal with some space pirates, Half Shell and Turtler. What the hell is going on there? Before learning to use the same star power that turned Optimus into Star Convoy, to turn himself into Super Megatron. Why wouldn't it be Super Galvatron? Surely the hierarchy would be Megatron, Galvatron, Super Galvatron. Oh, never mind. Anyway, that brings us on to the Headmasters, where Vector Sigma have been destabilized by the using of the Matrix energies to cure the hate plague in G1. So Galvatron launched a huge attack to try and take control of it while its defenses were weakened. He flew around in a giant scorpion, that was pretty wild. And here he is, just taking a little time to abuse Skullcruncher for falling asleep on the job. He got thrown into a fucking wall and then thrown into fucking Vector Sigma. Before he played a hand in one of the many deaths of Optimus Prime, forcing Prime to fuse with Vector Sigma, resulting in his death. It didn't seem all that bothered that Soundwave was killed in battle with Blaster. I guess he was just like, oh, we'll just recolor the fuck. He occupied Planet Beast, this whole planet full of these anthropomorphized... Anthropomorphous... What's the word I'm looking for again? Oh yeah, furries. So he enslaves the furries and scalies. What's this guy doing?
My heart goes out to you.
Oh, he has autism, that's why he's doing it.
Blind and autistic.
Forcing them to fight for him. He ordered the creation of a MacGuffin called the Mad Machine in another attempt to take control of Vector Sigma. Then ordered Sixshot to test the Mad Machine on Metroplex. Another one of his most deranged plans was the creation of what was known as a demon meteorite, which would do things like this.
Get onto a different course!
So basically he fitted massive gravity emitters to this thing, which not only gave control over its course through space, but could also manipulate any metal in its vicinity. So yeah, it could make ships go wibbly wobbly and was pretty dangerous to robotic life forms. So he pointed this thing straight at planet Athenia and sat back to watch maximum carnage. Unfortunately, he hadn't banked on a giant baby in a plastic suit and a fistful of C4 to blow the whole thing up.
Dude, I'm glad you're laughing.
What the fuck?
Anyway, as the Autobot headmasters racked up victory after victory, Galvatron's unbalanced nature started to unbalance even more, and he quickly lost any composure that he had left and started blaming his own troops. And no amount of ego massage from Cyclonus could settle him down. He laid the blame for the loss of Planet Beast firmly at the feet of Scorponok.
My furries!
Which was dangerous, as not only was he the leader of the Con headmasters, he was a rival for Galvatron's leadership. More tension was added to this rivalry when Galvatron wanted to acquire the Cyberton neuron. Hope I'm saying that right, but basically he wanted this to fashion himself a big, huge, dark Star Saber Star Sword and just go on a massive chopping frenzy.
Get chopped! Get chopped! Get
etc.
That was being engineered by Vector Sigma. Scorponok saw that if this fell into Autobot hands, the Cons would be done for, so he advocated destroying it and set explosives in Vector Sigma's chamber. Once Galvatron found out, he totally lost his shit and ran in there to defuse the bomb, regardless of the fact that it was about to blow him to Kingdom Come. And blow him it did! No. The explosion rocked the whole of Cybertron, and Galvatron was lost, thought dead, until showing up for Scorponok's coronation. I'm not sure it ever explains where he was, like where he went to, but he turns up in this multicolored glowing spaceship thing that beams him down. In fact, Scorponok asks him where he's been, and he just goes like,
I've been watching you!
and then just laughs. Okay, but no, you blew up. The whole fucking planet pretty much blew up.
Watching!
Okay.
Then he set about a series of raids to gather huge amounts of energy so he could set in motion his furious and mysterious endgame, occasionally forming alliances with the native corrupt dictators to really screw over a given planet's populace.
Captured me and made me work in the factory.
Are they sitting on tiny little invisible chairs? Or are they doing the Slav squat? You oversaw this slaughter right here when these guys were just trying to run away. And this literal killing field right here. Then it transpired that his master plan was to turn Earth into a huge planet-sized robotic body that he would then fuse with to become the beach ball whirlender that was known as Grand Galvatron. To do this, he would of course have to sacrifice the Decepticon army and use their dead bodies for parts. And he made absolutely no secret about it. He was like,
Yo, give me your arms and, in fact, just give me everything. I'm taking everything. Tell the others I'm gonna need everything.
this is the ultimate example of him not giving a fuck about his troops. So Six Shot was like, oh. This plan also would have apparently taken a chunk of Cybertron to be harvested too. Now, I have no idea what the designers were thinking when it comes to this thing, but whereas Unicron's limbs transformed out of his body, this guy just has limbs like glued onto a sphere. It looks so cobbled together and random. Anyway, Six Shot, utterly horrified by the plan, turned against him. Probably because Galvatron had him as first on the list for harvesting, so he joined forces with Scorponok. Before he could enact his plan, the Autobot headmasters used intel fed to them by their spy, Punch, and used their magical circular head formation to bury him in the eye. Kind of surprising that this was enough to hold him, but hey, if it could hold Bay vs. Megatron, who the motherfucker am I to question? So he sat there under the ice for God knows how long until Cyclonus came along and was almost possessed by the spirit of Galvatron. But that turned out to be an alternate that would come to be known as Galvatron 2, who we will definitely come back to later. The Battlestars comic specified that he was in the ice for 15 years until resurrected by a being called Dark Nova. He ripped Teletran 15's arm off in 15 Go Go, carried it around in his mouth as he fought Rodimus in the Legends comic. Tarantulas piloted his body around before it was eventually destroyed by Trypticon, and he built a spaceship that ate other spaceships in super robot lifeforms, as well as creating a clone army of Megatrons that he dubbed the Megatron Core that he could operate remotely. And he attempted to steal the Prime Energy Tower from the planet Femina with a unit of combiners. He kidnapped this Wolverine-haired scientist right here and tried to force him to upgrade his troops, but he was like, nope, and went and helped the Autobots instead. He tried to conquer Planet Beast for a second time, and when that failed, he just abandoned his troops again. In the Marvel comics, he tried to make himself as powerful as a god by siphoning the power of a volcano. Tried to throw Ultra Magnus into said volcano. After smashing his face into the ground, he erased Prime, Ratchet, and Prowl from the timeline altogether. He vaporized Skywarp, believing it was Starscream, and after rescuing an Autobot called Fizzle, he wigged out and slapped one of the Firecons into a tree, just for a laugh. Okay, rewinding again, there was this one timeline where Unicron actually managed to devour Cybertron, and he set Galvatron free and gave him a free shot at Earth. It's like, hey, it's yours, you do what you want with it. This, of course, gave us Marvel's Galvatron 2.
And his vampire teeth.
And in this one, he managed to conquer all of America. He strung up the corpse of Rodimus between the Twin Towers, and he would have little conversations with it and just be abusive to him. He destroyed Cyclonus when he got captured by the enemy, and probably would have taken over all of Earth had it not been for Unicron reaching into the future from the past to grab his herald and pull him back through time to help him with his fucking problems. Yeah, I don't really entirely get why Unicron would do this either, rather than the way that he always did it. Understandably pissed off that Unicron would reverse the deal, he started looking for ways to destroy the Chaos Bringer, and Emirate Zaron told him that if he somehow united all of the Transformers, they would defeat Unicron even without the Matrix. So Galvatron set about waking Primus, as he figured he was the only one who could unite all the disjointed factions. Primus teleported all of the Cybertronians back to Cybertron, and Galvatron had a good old laugh about how he could con even a god. He killed some Unicron cultists right here.
Oh, he put a grenade in his mouth
When they tried to kill Optimus, and then Galvatron powered himself up with energy from Cybertron itself and launched an attack on Unicron to release the most powerful shot he's ever shot out of his arm tube. But of course, this is Unicron we're talking about, so it's like, before slapping him out of the sky, the space sky. And Galvatron would not be seen again for the whole entire battle. But in doing what he's doing, he did inspire all of the other Transformers to unite against the Planet Eater. It turned out that he'd stowed away on the Ark, probably because he was so damaged, as it was requisitioned by Shockwave and Starscream, who wanted the ship to go to Earth to conquer it while its defenses were down. Galvatron figured he'd let them do all the hard work, and then he'd overthrow them to take control of the planet. Then by some wild coincidence, they discovered Megatron on the ship. This had Galvatron shook. He didn't seem to know how to react until he was like, oh yeah, I know how to react. Galvatron went total psycho and set about dismantling him, stating that it was the only way to exorcise him from his mind. But just as he was about to kill him, he realized that this might disrupt his own history, which it wouldn't have because they were from separate timelines, but it put a doubt in his mind. And then he even saved him when Shockwave attacked Megatron, smashing Shockwave's head into a fucking wall. And in typical erratic fashion, Galvatron realized that their combined power could be devastating. So the two teamed up and made Shocky Baby their first bloody victim. But before they could put that plan into action, Ratchet sabotaged the Ark and they crash landed in Canada, where a bunch of army types tried to attack him, but Galvatron just slaughtered them. Then he headed to the nearest town to start taking out the human populace, one little town at a time. But he had this interesting moment of self-conflict, and he had all these violent flashbacks, which allowed some of the humans to escape. It was like this mini mind crisis, and he had to tell himself to fight through the madness. But he was finally intercepted when Spike decided to become a headmaster and unite with the mighty Fortress Maximus. The battle raged through the next few issues and ended with Fort Max, surprise, surprise, throwing Galvatron into, surprise, surprise, yes, another frozen lake. Now, if all that Galvatron 2 stuff wasn't confusing enough, Marvel didn't exactly simplify things in Regeneration 1, which started when Hot Rod got sent on a journey through Zero Space. So Zero Space is a convergence point of all the realities that happens when all of space-time converge down to a single point at the end of time. So it starts with Hot Rod, our Hot Rod, I think it's our Hot Rod, the main Hot Rod, witnessing a death of one of his own multiversal counterparts at the hands of the Sweeps and Galvatron. Before Galvatron, our Galvatron 2 bursts out of the ice 21 years after he was frozen. He beat up Starscream whilst he was only half functioning nonetheless. Yeah, he had all the mental faculties of a dribbling potato at this stage. Then forced him to help rewire Shockwave into the Ark to serve, slaving as its operating system. Vowing to make this version of Cybertron his, he flew the Ark into Earth orbit as a decoy, with Starscream aboard to be shot down while he attempted to sneak in undetected. He made no secret that Starscream was disposable, which kind of backfired when Screamy teamed up with Shockwave to unleash a Guardian droid on him, then fired an anti-asteroid cannon on him after blasting him into space. He took out an Autobot called Scram before getting caught in some collapsing ruins. He was then retrieved by some of the acolytes of Unicron, and what thanks did they get? Having all of their energy drained by a being posing as Primus, which was used to revive our guy, who then went on another mad killing spree and slaughtered a bunch of Autobot techs. Galvatron here turned out to be a key piece of the plan of a dark entity, the one pretending to be Primus, who wanted to use the self-proclaimed Ravager of Worlds as well as a possessed Fort Max to spread itself across the multiverse. When the Autobots attacked the entity, Galvatron weakened temporarily, allowing Magnus to get the upper hand in a fierce battle, snap his neck, and crush his head. Now, the comics that relate to the Japanese G1 continuity are a little tricky. Basically, what I'm saying is that I've had to patch together the imagery you're looking at here. But in short, Galvatron slipped into a new dimension and bullied a new world with a fleet of war worlds. Not sure where he got those. Bullied Magnus again, even after he'd been upgraded with a laser rod body. Nearly killed him. Demoted Megatron. Took control of his troops and assigned him the humiliating new job of guarding an underground base. Basically a security guard job. He went after Planet Beast again and built a whole artificial planet to harvest its energies, then used that to charge up and blast a whole bunch of monster bots. He murdered Double Cross twice. Can only find one example though. Before going after the mythical gems of the three wise ones, realizing that they would grant him a powerful beast mode if he obtained all three. With just the one though, he created a series of natural disasters on Planet Beast. He survived an execution attempt by Unicron Neo, who was an alternate of Unicron, before he was thrown across dimensions and back in time in the battle. In this new timeline, he tried to erase the original Galvatron. He pretended to be subordinate to Megatron before turning on him and openly attacking him. Then Cyclonus revisited the site of his icy entombment from Headmasters, remember that? And Galvatron 2 talked Cyclonus into carrying him around
on my tummy,
before traveling into deep space to try and talk Unicron into being possessed. Like I said, Unicron was like, no, but here's a new body made up of this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. And then being decombined by the Autobot disaster relief team. Unicron figured out that he would betray him though, and sent the Combatrons, and blasted Galvatron. So in a desperate last attempt to regain control of the situation, Galvatron attempted to possess Mega Empress before he was countered by Grand Scourge and got knocked into a dimensional rift. In one of the mangas, Galvatron launched a public indiscriminate attack on a city, tearing through both human military and the Autobots. And then, after his physical body was destroyed, Galvatron's spark possessed Cyclonus, using his subordinate like a puppet to continue his violent spree. And then he attempted to kill a human child because this kid had the ability to control Energon. There was Project Brain Drain, where he siphoned the intelligence of a massive crowd of innocent humans at a concert to convert their brain power into energy. He used an invisible neuron beam to launch a surprise assault on Metroplex, destroying both the city and its population. And he blasted Bumblebee into a flaming wreck and crushed him under his foot. The IDW continuity did things differently in that Galvatron was never the upgraded version of Megs and was his own bot altogether. In fact, much older than Megatron. A brutal warrior from a barbaric era in the long ago time of Cybertron's past. According to ancient historic texts, he predated even the 13. Remember that they were different too though in IDW. They weren't the demigods that we're accustomed to, they were more like tribal warlords. But it was Galvatron and his twin sister Arcee that paved the way for their rule. Basically, they started off as slaves in an area of Cybertron called Proto-Hex, cruelly ruled by Septimus Prime. His way of keeping the populace distracted from their lack of energon was vicious gladiator battles. It got so sadistic that Septimus ordered Arcee and Galvatron to fight each other. So they reluctantly started knocking the crap out of each other until coincidentally Megatronus' expansion of the Darklands reached their gate, and he asked Septimus to join his ranks. Septimus refused, but Galvatron and Arcee didn't. So Megatronus allowed the twins to kill their former master before joining Megatronus against his next target, Crystal City and its prime, Onyx. The twins quickly distinguished themselves as Megatronus' fiercest warriors, even against the might of Onyx's beast formers. This tribal warfare eventually came to a close and the Primes made peace and established a somewhat peaceful structure of government. He participated in the annihilation of the Antillans, a large and technologically advanced society whose destruction made the rest of the galaxy fear the Cybertronians. The peace wouldn't last and the first Cybertronian civil war broke out, with Galvatron declaring a one-man crusade against anything that didn't have a vehicle mode. He learned that the Enigma of Combination was being used to fuse bots with smaller beast headmasters, again something he found abhorrent, so he slaughtered the first group that he came across, led by a bot called Miscreon, and just ripping the beast headmaster in half right here. Then he found out that it was Nexus Prime that was responsible, so he... well, see for yourself. That's a fully charged fusion blast straight to the spark right there. This made Galvatron the first regular Transformer to kill a Prime. At some point round about here, he joined forces with Nova Prime, serving as his vanguard as he set about expanding the Cybertronian Empire across the galaxy. And on one spacefaring mission, they came across a rift in space-time, and Nova ordered that they fly into it. Here, they unknowingly breached another universe, a malevolent place inhabited only by the unliving, hungering to consume life. This place was the result of a certain purple scientist who leached all of its energy and life force from the moment of its inception, leaving only a realm of emptiness and bitterness. Passing through to this dimension killed the crew of the ship, by definition at least, with an undead Nova rechristening himself Nemesis Prime and hatching a plot to merge the two universes and essentially feeding all life to the dead universe. He would send his lieutenant on missions into our universe, where he could actually only survive for short periods of time, but his most important mission was to secure Thunderwing, who's possibly the most powerful single Decepticon to ever exist. He killed this guy called Leadfoot just by touching him and barely even noticed Hound and his whole squad hitting him with everything that they had. Even after Sideways nearly blew his head to pieces, he was up and firing just like one panel later, which of course let him get away with Thunderwing's body. Then he actually saved Earth, in the short term anyway, when he killed these aliens called the Reapers. I talked about them in my video on Six Shot, but the main takeaway is that the cons were really struggling with them until Galvatron came in and waved his hand and gave them a good dose of the deaths. More importantly though, it was here that we began to see that he might have ulterior motives and his own plans with the energies of the dead universe. He helped trigger the dead universe's expansion using these devices called Negacores, and he and Cyclonus were tasked with guarding the cores when Cloudburst popped up, so he ordered Cyclonus to brutally murder him. Then, instead of helping his leader fight Optimus, he blasted him in the back, causing the dark energies to jump into Optimus. So he gave Optimus the choice of giving the dark energies to him or destroy the dark energies by killing himself. It's kind of a win-win for Galvatron, either get the energies or be rid of Prime. Win! OP came down on the side of giving him the energies, but took advantage of his lapse while he absorbed them to throw him into a solar pool. Woo! Now sure, this disintegrated them both, but also fused them together, so he was soon back. And here is where the craziness starts, because so far IDW Galvatron has been fairly level-headed. He tracked down Cyclonus and Scourge and promptly threw Scourge into a smelting pool, which bizarrely not only resurrected Scourge, but also created an army of clones, who would become the Sweeps, who were cannibals, by the way. He brought mad scientist Jaxus back to life by using the Force, pretty much, to reassemble all of his components telekinetically, and got him to rebuild the space bridge network that would allow him to spread chaos and death across the galaxy. He found a mysterious sphere, a portal to the dead universe that lured a whole entire population of a planet to their deaths. When he touched it, he was recharged by the dead universe, and he was able to beat RC and Hardhead in battle like they weren't even there. He reached into Hardhead's mind and brainwashed him into serving him, before traveling to the dead universe again to meet the terrifying entity known only as the D-Void. Realizing the power and true malevolence of this thing, he escaped and ordered his troops to start building an army to fight it off. He inadvertently saved these weird aliens who floated around space in a pirate ship as they were being attacked by a space kraken, I guess. A dragon! And they were all like, thank you, thank you. But turns out he was only interested in finding a big bot called Thinkbox, who would somehow become the central mechanism of their pirate ship and promptly rip through their hull as he transformed. And then they all fucked off and left these guys stranded. He was further shocked to find that the D-Void had resurrected Nemesis Prime, who was eager to get revenge on our guy. After he was nearly killed by Nova, he used the oncoming battle against the D-Void as an excuse to try and take over Cybertron again. But he was sidetracked when he pulled some space blob onto his ship and it turned out to be a horde of zombies. Yeah, long story. But basically, he and the Autobots had to send all these guys back to the beginning of the dead universe. He sent a contingent of sweeps to wipe out the Autobots stationed at the Kimia weapons facility. And while trying to figure out a ceasefire and a way to work together with Prime, he boiled it down to, well, you're either with us or against us, and tried to kill them all once again. Turns out that he wanted Kimia as it could be transformed into a giant particle cannon, which Galvatron promptly ordered Scourge to fire at Cybertron. At this stage, nobody really knew why. He revealed that his targets wasn't the Autobots, though, but Cybertron itself. And after a brief battle, he changed his goals and declared the Autobots' targets as well. Just kill them all. As he ventured down into the crater, it became clear that this whole thing had been about drilling a hole into the surface of Cybertron. I guess that was the easiest way of getting access to Vector Sigma. Then, energies that may or may not have emanated directly from him caused all of the cons to merge together into the D-Void's colossal avatar, which went on a Godzilla with hot sauce up its butt style rampage. So he gets to Vector Sigma, which he then poisoned with dark energies. But weirdly enough, he did this to try and save Cybertron. He genuinely did think this was the way to beat the D-Void, although being seen as the savior of Cybertron seemed to be more important than the safety of Cybertron itself. Like when he heard that Megatron was fighting the D-Void avatar alone, he was like, yeah, but I'm saving. Anyway, blasted Optimus in the back right here before his body started to crumble away and his realization that all he had done was give the entity a dead planet to use as a portal. This also caused Cybertron to start crumbling away too. Optimus cleared the whole thing up with a blast of his Matrix energies though. Pretty sure he's never done that before. Galvatron was merely transported to the dead universe though, where he and Nova, yeah, he was calling himself Nova again, since he was free from the influence of the dead universe, put aside their differences for the time being and concentrated on getting the hell out of there. And they got their opportunity when Shockwave turned Megatron into a makeshift space bridge, which ripped Megatron in half. He just discarded the torso like it was trash. He slapped up Bumblebee before he was, commandeered by Shockwave, who used his link to the dead universe to harvest all of the energy from its inception, which, like I said, is the reason it was dead in the first place. Then came Megatron's monumental defection to the Autobots, which gave our guy a clear pass for leadership of the cons. Listening to some level-headedness from Soundwave, he agreed to go to Earth and pursue peace, but that was basically just a time buy for him to get all his pieces in place on the board and organize his next attempt at conquest. He ambushed Prime where the Autobots showed up. He threatened to kill the entire populations of New Mexico and Old Mexico after the EDC, the Earth Defense Command, hit him with a mind bomb that knocked him This was right in the middle of him fighting Devastator, so it probably wounded his ego more than anything. After which he killed General Witwicky, as it was him who ordered the device's use. Oh, and also, he blamed Prowl for the murder. He manipulated RC into helping find Spike Witwicky with an eventual end goal of destroying the Enigma of Combination, like he wanted to do all those years ago. He kidnapped GB Blackrock, who he suspected to be a spy for Onyx Prime. He just wanted him so he could use the Mind Bomb on all his enemies. He blasted Cliffjumper without even looking. His attempt at conquering Earth didn't go to plan, but did force Optimus to teleport in and declare that it was now under his protection. But from the human perspective, this raised questions as to whether Optimus was simply another conqueror, a narrative that Galvatron furthered, saying that it pleased him that the Primes were back and conquering as it always was. He unleashed the Seeker clone combiners and turned the Earth itself into a giant Enigma of Combination and used it to create the combiners Sky Rain and Galvatronus. Which is another hypocrisy from our guy here, which he even admits for a guy who hates combiners. He shows he's just fine using them when it's convenient. He shot down Cosmos before fleeing on board Astro Train. But he got injured and begged Galvatron to help, but Galvatron just used him as a battering ram. Before RC cut him, Astro Train that is, in half. Here he took on Prime, RC, and Soundwave. And it was the latter who shot him in the back. Before RC destroyed his fusion cannon, an explosion that destroyed his whole right side. He warned of the onset of Onyx Prime and offered his aid in fighting him, but Optimus, perhaps swayed by the fact that he'd mind-linked with Prowl when they combined to form Optimus Maximus a little bit earlier, said he was no longer interested in alliances, and even though Galvatron surrendered, he executed him by shooting a huge hole in his abdomen and removed his head to present to the president and removed his head to present to the President of America. You know, as a kind of way of saying, hey, look, we ain't violent at all. It's got to be hard being a terrifying genocidal maniac while wearing baby pink, man. But Beast Wars 2 Galvatron pulls it off, I gotta say. He still managed to be pretty scary. And for me, it works because in my mind, at least, I'm not sure if this is factually accurate. In my mind, he's the evolution of Beast Wars Megatron, who was always a little flamboyant, wasn't he?
Yes.
Anyway, he tried to murder Leo Convoy a whole bunch of times, but I guess that's a given. He manipulated Megastorm. This is his own brother we're talking about here. Into falsely attacking the Maximals. But then Megastorm was trying to overthrow him every 5 minutes anyway. Then got really drunk and attacked his own troops. Then he enslaved the Seacons. He allowed Nemesis to consume Jupiter and brainwashed Leo Jr., corrupting him with Anglemoy energy, resulting in him attacking his own father. And then he turned into a massive fuck off. Dragon! Did loads of dragon stuff.
Galvatron!
In the movieverse, an evil corporation called KSI took Megatron's brain, which then influenced the transformium of a man-made drone to make sure it looked nothing like Optimus Prime, which is what KSI originally wanted. He intended to use the body to steal a device called the Sea that could cyberform huge areas of a planet and kill a shitload of dinosaurs that were just minding their own fucking business, and got his chance when KSI put the 5th iteration of the body into action to counter a raid on their Chicago facility. You know what, seeing this again makes me remember that this is one thing I really didn't like about Age of Extinction, and that was the transformations, the way they kind of dissolve into these cubes and then reform again. And I know it's explained and it makes sense in the context and all that, but as a viewer I want to suspend my disbelief, but here I can't. It's just blatantly a visual effect. Okay, sorry, whinge over. Anyway, the plan goes pear-shaped. Galvatron starts popping off rockets left, right, and center. He blades this car in half. This car got boom-boomed. He made that chick from Pacific Rim show moderate concern. He made Marky Mark pull all kinds of reaction. Reaction. Oh no, that's a pretty good one. Once recaptured, he resurrected his contingent of Decepticons, trashed the KSI lab looking for the seed, before having a minor role in, really quite a minor role in the final battle. I'm fairly certain Kasim G was in the final battle more than he was. And then just walking away at the end. And I guess just transferring his mind back to a Megatron chassis because after Age of Extinction was never seen again. He left Thrust to a horrible death. What the fuck? Now Thrust was a traitor, so technically he might have deserved it. But he got stuck in this closing door thing on Unicron's body, little reminiscent of Starscream getting his leg stuck in the 86 movie, and started begging for his life as he was about to slowly get crushed. And Galvatron just walks away.
Cool guys don't look at explode.
He ordered the Hydra cannon be fired at Earth. That's a biggie. Yeah, he forced Starscream to pull the trigger, killing his new Huey friends, and the whole thing resulted in Optimus exploding into breadcrumbs that rained down into the atmosphere. Yes, he's made of bread. That's why he's so powerful. He used his protege Starscream as a distraction.
Why have you all abandoned
before sticking a sword in his chest. He showed like a massive blind spot when it came to the incoming world-ending Unicron. He used Unicron's body to wreak havoc in Transformers Energon. He strapped Scorponok to an asteroid and then threw it into an Energon grid. Although that might have been as Megatron. Yeah, in this continuity, he went from Megatron to Galvatron, back to Megatron, back to Galvatron, then to another Galvatron, then back to Megatron, and then back to Galvatron again. He did the old stomp and grind on Six Shot's face after he failed him.
Remember? Nah! Let this be a lesson to all who dare to chance.
He dragged Cybertron into space on a super Energon tether, poisoned the Autobots with Energon gas. I don't think he did it intentionally, but all this gas leaked out during a battle, and he found that it was harmful to Autobots but not to Decepticons. So the Autobots had to flee, which effectively gave the whole of Cybertron to the Decepticons. He planned to destroy the entire universe with a black hole, knowing full well that his own Decepticon troops would die in the process. Then he threw the Omega Lock and Cyberplanet keys into the black hole, hoping that it would destroy the whole entire universe. He banished Starscream, Soundwave, and Sideways to another dimension, and pulled Jungle Planet into the black hole too. Once again trying to avert his enslavement at the hands of Unicron, the War for Cybertron trilogy saw him traveling back in time via the Dead Universe to teach Megatron the destructive properties of the Dead Universe, to transform his hate into real energy, so that Megatron could kill Optimus and take the Matrix. Then he sought out the Unicron reborn Nemesis Prime and traveled back with him to get Megs to use the Allspark to destroy Unicron, even though it would destroy Cybertron in the process. He slapped aside Cheetah and made short work of Beast Megatron before being killed by the spirits of the War Fallen and Elita 1, which left him stranded in space only to be picked up by Unicron to be reformatted once more, continuing the cycle of the damned and once again showing this unbreakable loop of slavery, then rage, and then insanity that's at this character's core. I gotta skedaddle. Got most powerful triple changes waiting on the shelf. Grimlock will be coming up at some point. Then I think I'm gonna look at which incarnations of the individual characters are the most powerful. So let me know which character I should kick that off with. Thanks again for 100k. If you want to participate in the Robosen giveaway, find me on the social media network formerly known as Twitter, Mr.Normal_person. Send me a DM and I'll get back to you with the raffle number. Thanks again to Robosen, and make sure you're checking the link below and their other very cool products too. And for now, it's cheerio, bye. Laters.